right, welcome everyone back to Label Paranormal, a podcast where we explore the unexplained, mysterious, and downright spooky. We're your hosts, Tom.
And Mark.
And each episode will bring in a new topic of ghosts, aliens, cryptids, or other phenomena that defy conventional logic. So basically, if it has the label of paranormal, we'll talk about it. So this week we have we're going back to a mysterious, unexplained phenomenon that happens in Alaska more than anything. Everybody's heard of the Bermuda Triangle, right? Whether you believe it or not, believe it's something geothermal or, electromagnetic, or that it's just a cursed area on the map. Not many people have heard of the Alaskan Triangle. And the Alaskan Triangle is, I guess, if you want to stack it up pound for pound, has way more lost souls than the water. And this is over land, so it's crazy to think of, but upwards of 20,000 people so far have gone missing in the wilderness of Alaska. Wow. And most of them, to be fair, they don't leave anything behind, and that's sad to say. But these people seem to vanish mysteriously, not found later, not maybe, I'm sure that counts for some of it, murders, things like that. But these people have just seemingly up and vanished into thin air. And honestly, the scary part is it's not just people, but machinery, equipment, full planes, submarines, things like that have completely gone missing in Alaska. Many major motion pictures have been made about this subject too. One that comes to mind is the Fourth Kind, and which I love. That was a great movie, definitely great. I love the ones that blur the line and show sort of like real footage or found footage. I do have a favorite of those as well. But that one tried to explain the mystery of alien abductions in Nome, Alaska. And, the triangle, if you were to take a map and look at it, stretches basically to the Canadian border, to the middle of Canada, to the very northern tip to the middle of Alaska, to the very northern tip, and then back down. So it doesn't encompass the whole bit of Alaska, and I guess that just goes to show you how big Alaska really is. But there's a lot of phenomena that happen in that triangle, and in that triangle there are cities. There are populated areas. It's easy to say if it was, because when we think of Alaska, we generally think all of it is wilderness, and honestly, a lot of it is, but there are big cities that can account for these for people and major populations. The little adventurous part of me says, Alaska is our last great frontier. It's our last great wilderness. We don't have that anymore. And I know you can talk about the Pacific Northwest and things like that, which there are areas of that, but Alaska, the surrounding population there's no comparison to what the population of Washington or Oregon brings. So, I do think it's the last great wilderness. Is it we'll dive into what theories we could have, but let's get started with talking about some of these mysteries in Alaska, right? Let's get started and dive into them. So I don't want to have a starting off point, because when you have mysteries, there is no start, right? It always was like that. It's just until we started noticing. So I guess we started noticing mysteries at the time of right around end of World War II, beginning points of the Cold War. Alaska was a major front. It was a major point because I believe, here's my geography failing me, but I believe it's only about 35 miles or so from the one point of Alaska to Russia. And, it's an area where, people thought, hey, if they're going to come over, they might come through this way. So we needed to have more of a military presence in Alaska, right? Because that's essentially our buffer, right? Yeah. Yes, we have Canada. Yes, there's other things, but Alaska is American soil. So we needed to set up a base there. So, and even to this day, to be honest with you, I had friends, when I graduated way back in 2006 that went to the Army. They went and they trained and did all of their, what's it called? Boot camp. I almost drew a blank on the word. Up in Fort Richardson in Alaska. Yeah. And, completely opposite side of the United States, really. Like the furthest you can go from where we are here on the East Coast. But that's where they went up to. And, it was wilderness all around. And if you're dedicated to training, I mean, what better place? There is no outside activity for anybody to get in trouble with, right?
It's beautiful up there.
I'm sure they did get in trouble, but it wasn't aided, I should say, by outside cities and population. But so even to this day, it's still a very a major military training facility, training center. And getting back into it, I don't want to dive off topic here, but getting back into the 1950s, we had a Douglas I believe it was 350 or 750 airliner that wasn't so much of a fighter jet. It wasn't a military plane in terms of fighter jet, but it was a military plane that transported cargo, personnel, what have you, to wherever they needed to go.
Yeah.
And this plane, took off from the middle of Alaska, and I'm drawing a blank actually on the name. It's a C-54D, and it took off from the Biggs Air Force Base. That's where I'm seeing it here. Oh, I'm sorry, Elmendorf Air Force Base.
Yeah,
in
Elmendorf,
Anchorage, Alaska. So it took off there. It was flying to Montana, so it needed to go over Canadian Air to get there. The first check-in point, mandatory check-in point, because they have mandatory check-in points back then. I'm not sure if they still do now, but
they should.
Might. But
yeah.
Back then you had check-in points which were essentially handoffs, communication handoff points with the ground. And their latest one was Snag in the Yukon Territory, which it's a phenomenal name. I would love to live in a town called Snag. I mean, just like you snag your clothing on something. That's how it's spelled. That's the name. I love it. So the good old people of Snag, radioed in to the, everything was fine. Hey, we're moving along. Okay, you're clear to go. Whatever they had to say, they told them, they went on. The next check-in point would have been over Montana, I believe, and it never got there. So it's apparently it wasn't unheard of that people miss check-in points. It's not like all alarms, but the alarm started going up when it never landed and it didn't make its scheduled time. Our military got concerned, what's going on. So, with that first check-in from Snag, we knew that, okay, we have a geographic area of where it could have gone. Maybe they got lost, so we'll add some miles to the north, the south, the west, the east, whatever it might be. And when they went and started surveying this area, with the basic, going to look for a downed airplane, see if there's any survivors, they couldn't find anything. Now, this kind of sounds like the Malaysian flight, but a little bit different because we're not over an ocean that's several, miles deep. This is, yes, it's rough terrain, it's mountainous, but, we can see where the ground is, right? Upon everything. There's no jungle. There's no, it might be hidden under there. We should get some people on the ground. No, you're able to do a good scout from the north, or from the air, I should say, every which way. And not a single thing was found in this area. Back in the 1950s, subsequent searches, years later, after they could not find anything again, they gave them the, they're probably dead, and the message, the next of kin, notification. Not a single piece of wreckage, people, no distress call, obviously with no parts of the plane. I mean, not even wreckage, fuselage, you name it, not even toilet paper from the bathroom on the plane, right? Not even anything. So, some documentaries have come out about it. I know there was one in 2022. I have not watched yet, but I know they still haven't found it, but they were examining the area with more drones and technology that they didn't have back in the day. Mm-hmm. But in terms of kicking off these mysteries, and to make it more modern, I guess, because I'm sure that this has happened for, throughout human history. But if we take it to a modern area, that's a good place to start in the 1950s with what was the first Douglas C-54 that went missing over Alaskan soil. So, not only, I'm going to piggyback off this a little bit, Mark, and then get your thoughts on it. But after that, there was another nuclear plane that was supposed to take off from Elmendorf years later. And it took off from Elmendorf, I should say. It was going to Texas, and it was carrying a bomb, a nuclear bomb. It crashed, and the bomb is missing. And they eventually found the wreckage of this plane that happened there, but there's been no evidence of a bomb that in the Alaskan water, because it did have to fly for some parts of the water, and then in the water, it still has not been recovered, and it is one of two that we know. I mean, that we know, and by we I mean the public. Know that is a lost nuclear
Yeah.
weapon on American soil or right up against American soil. So the idea that
Yeah.
that these things happen, to not only to commercial planes and jets, but to military is scary. And it could even, a part of this mystery deeper is that we lost a nuclear bomb. So what do you think about that
Yeah.
one?
Well, I have a few thoughts I want to interject.
Sure,
Like
yeah.
you were saying, you had friends that joined the military and they threw him up there into Alaska, and I got friends that did the same. My buddy joined the Coast Guard, and he went right up there, and he would tell me that they were doing drills to practice against fighting off the Russians if they had to, and I thought that was pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
But about so I also saw on Max that they had this whole TV show about the Alaska Triangle. I didn't even know it was like a thing, like the Bermuda Triangle. And I just started watching this. It's a fantastic show. It's phenomenal. And the one of the first episodes is about this Douglas C-130 plane that went missing. That didn't check into Montana. And
Mm-hmm.
now you have to realize that going from Snag to Montana, that is an immense region of the Rocky Mountains.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it is quite perilous. But when that plane went down, they conducted the largest air search ever during the time. Like, I think that they said that they covered like 300,000 square miles
Yeah.
of
That's
air with
humongous.
all
Humongous.
of the U.S. Air Force's planes that well, not all of them, but the search
Yeah.
and rescue planes that they were using. I mean, this is the largest recovery operation by the U.S. Air Force at the time, which is really incredible to think about. And also, why put this much resources into trying to recover a cargo plane that went down in our territory? Like
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, Canadian territory, but we're still,
Yeah.
all about that. But why go through such an immense effort to recover the cargo of that plane? That's what's interesting to me. And it's like you said with that other one where they lost the nuke.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, did they have some
The
sort of nuclear
B-36 bomber
technology
that it
on this
was.
plane?
Sorry to cut
Yeah.
you off. It was a B-36 bomber with
Oh
a
no.
Mark
Yeah.
IV nuclear weapon, which is as high
Yeah.
as you can get without a radioactive core. I believe
Yeah.
now, I might be wrong, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you can get to, the next step up is an active loaded bomb. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That would be for raids, honestly, for raids and missions. So to have something like that, but to your point, yes, that is, I understand it's human life. And it was a good amount. It wasn't two pilots and a gunner. These were about 44,
Yeah.
I think, is what I saw, people that were on that
Yeah.
plane. And there is something to be said for that. I would want, if it was my family member, I would want all the resources exhausted and all of that. I totally understand all of that. But
Yeah.
when you talk about you know the largest air search, they had, and being a cargo ship as well, they had to have a secondary meaning to go look for that plane.
That's what
And
I'm thinking.
put all of the human life thing aside. I totally understand you exhaust. There is no price of a human life. Please go. Up until they're caught, they're
Yeah.
missing. You know what I mean? And presumed alive. Until somebody
Right.
tells you otherwise. But
And that's all
after,
fine and good, but that's not necessarily how the military sees human life. You know what I
no,
mean? With their
no.
soldiers, So I feel like there's a secondary objective here.
There has to be, and you're right. They're units. They're parts of the whole sum. They're just units. I
Right.
understand that how you have to see it that way, and you probably have to have that kind of outlook when you deal with human life and a war capacity. So, having a secondary meaning, what could have been on that plane that was so important. Now, take yourself back to the
Mm.
time, late 40s, early 50s. You are, we're not in the middle of the Cold War yet, but we're having side eye, like what are they doing over there to Russia right now, right? So,
Yeah.
we're getting, our chest puffed out for the Cold War that's coming in the, later, I guess the heyday would be late 60s or late 70s or so. And
Yes.
so you're not there yet. I get it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? But you're trying to, work with tech and things of that nature. Um, how much could tech be advanced from Alaska moving down to Montana? Mm, I don't know in the 1950s if that was it,
Well,
but what it could be, I think, is it might be some sort of military or a weapon, what I mean, more than tech. Where would you kind of put your thoughts on that?
yeah. Well, so we have to realize that Elmendorf was a premier military base at the time because it was the
Yeah,
early 50s. This is the beginning of the Cold War.
yes.
Elmendorf was the base
They
that
got the
we
money.
were
They did. They had to.
buffing the crap out of.
Yeah.
To that was our front forwarding base towards Russia.
Yes.
So Elmendorf had a bunch of crazy stuff going on that we will never know about. So
Mhm.
I'm not necessarily saying it's tech related, although it could be, but I do think that it was probably nuclear related, and they probably just didn't want to alert the public. Perhaps this cargo plane was carrying ingredients for nuclear weapons or something along
Yeah.
those lines. It's really hard to determine um, what happened to this plane, but it was certainly mysterious, and it sort of echoes this pattern of these sort of missing planes over these regions that are like the Alaska Triangle, like the Bermuda Triangle. What do you think about that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So, definitely what you were saying, how it can't be understated about where these things are geographically, right? When you have the Bermuda Triangle and you have the Alaska Triangle, they're almost direct corners of each other. If you think about it just in a flat map point of view. I'm certainly not one to try to even guess how portals work, but I would assume where you have to have one entry, you need to probably have an exit, and things of that nature, for whatever comes out.
Yeah.
The huge electromagnetic fields. I mean, that's there's a lot of volcanic activity, and it's I can say this confidently because this is science. There's higher electromagnetic fields and a very very high population of sightings of UFOs in and around volcano craters. Could
Yes.
could a volcano and the EMF be the raised EMF fields be a portal for interdimensional or interstellar travel? If you're telling me that EMFs accompany the paranormal and there's a ridiculous, more than human powered way to make it naturally, it wouldn't be, too far fetched to think about it that way. Go ahead.
Well, what do you think about? So, have you looked into Mount Hayes at all? Because I know of Mount Hayes, but apparently there's some remote viewer was looking
Mm-hmm.
for something in the region, and they were drawn. Their attention was drawn to Mount Hayes, and it was revealed that there was some sort of alien base that they saw deep within Mount Hayes. And this is like this mountain is so remote. It's next to Denali. I think it's actually bigger than Denali, but they don't actually try to climb this mountain because it's just too dangerous to even attempt. What do you think about
Yeah, I mean,
that stuff?
Mount Hayes, and I'm not going to try to be an expert, but Mount Hayes had, if you look into the paranormal of and UFOs up in, Alaska or the Northwest, you do hear about it because of, being a remote mountain. Um, you know, I have to think, where there's smoke, there's fire, and where there's larger than natural EMF detections in Mount Hayes than even um, other, mountainous or volcanic areas. if you're going to go to something and do some kind of dangerous travel, you want to have the safest one possible. If more EMF means it's safer, then it's not unrealistic to think they're going to go to that one. And they're going to pick one that's out of the way. Case in point, Alaska. If
Yeah.
you're going to make yourself known and you're going to have weird experimentations in the Cold War with nuclear things, where are you going to put it? Are you going to put it in the middle of New York City or a New Jersey base or a Philadelphia base or Chicago? No, you're going to go to Alaska. You're going to get a winter jacket and you're going to build a bonfire and you're going to work on nuclear shit. That's what I think you're going to do, because you know what? We know it's dangerous, and if it blows up, well, they're all the way over there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Out in the middle of nowhere.
There's a lot of things that make sense with this. But in getting back into the natural wonders, I guess, of Alaska and things like that, it's very odd. It's very odd that we would want that piece of land. Now, here I'm going to get into the 1950s and buying the land, you know what I mean, or 1940s or so.
Go for it.
Buying the land. What did they see up there? I understand you have the land bridge. I understand you have the connection point where you're almost to the Far East, basically. You know what I mean, by connecting Alaska to Russia. I get all of that.
Yeah.
But Canada could have had that, and we could have put hey, we'll help you out and we'll have an Air Force base up here. You know what I mean? We have bases in other countries. That's not crazy at all. There's other islands that have other Air Force bases on it that from other countries that we own. So to be up there and to want that piece of land, we must have sought value in it. We must have sought value in whatever it was up there. And you know how I always say this, but the government is amazing at, hey, look over here, but their really point is over here. You know what I mean? They want to get you to look elsewhere.
Exactly.
So that land bridge, that point to Alaska, that could be a great way to purchase land with an ulterior motive of, I don't give a damn about what's that land bridge and what's up there. I'm going to focus on this hub right in the center, because I believe whether it's due to physical changes in the climate and things like that being so close to the North Pole, maybe we needed to have a footprint close to the North Pole. Maybe there's, magnetic waves that we can access easier from up there to help our technology, to our military. I'm not going to even venture to guess, but we know why we bought Hawaii, right? We know why having an island in the middle of the Pacific, you know what I mean, is good.
Yeah.
What do you think was Alaska?
Well,
am I missing something?
So I think originally when they bought it, and I think this is in the 30s or 40s, I forget the exact year that they bought it. Something like that. It was originally the media labeled it as Seward's Folly, because I think it was a senator or some Senator Seward or something that went through with the purchase. And I believe what it was is that they were searching for natural resources, and Alaska is abundant in natural resources. In fact, I think they make so much money from natural resources and oil and things like that, that the populace that lives there actually gets a stipend from the government, just because they have so much. So that would be the number one reason I would think to purchase Alaska. But initially, it was so far out of the way that, it's kind of like, might as well just leave it to the Canadians. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is, there is a lot of natural resources up there. Now, was there other ulterior motives? Probably, as there usually is. Was it related to alien bases? I don't know. I mean, from what David Grush says, we have these crashes going back to the 30s, Who knows what they knew back then? Maybe they figured it out.
I mean, we love to be isolationists or non-geographic isolationists, where we need to have it and no one else can have it, right? Whatever it might be, nuclear or UFO. So there's definitely that pattern in our history of that.
Yeah.
But, one thing that was a perfect segue that you led into was another disappearance in Alaska. This time, as if military personnel wasn't important enough, which, if you were to rank lives to the U.S. government, they're up there too. They're more than us. I'll tell you that. But you know, you had two you had two senators disappear in
Oh
Alaska as
yeah,
well. Did you see that about Boggs
I
and
heard about
the
this.
gentleman who is
Yeah.
named Nick something? Oh, Bigetch. So Boggs, it was the House Majority Leader. So this guy
Okay.
is fourth or so in succession line. He's not a regular, right,
Yeah.
in the Congress. However, he kind of was with a regular on this flight. Begich
Yeah.
was a freshman congressman from Alaska. So
Okay.
you have a freshman incoming, and you have the House Majority Leader. So where I'm already have questions right there. Why are you up
Yeah.
in Alaska with this guy who, is yes from the same party as you, but what could you be doing up there in the first place? If you wanted to like say hello or see where you can collaborate with a fellow congressman, you don't have to
Yeah.
be in Alaska for that.
No, you don't need to go up to Alaska for that. In fact,
No. Well, let's look at it this way. When you're in the House, you have a 2-year term. Not a senator who has a 6-year term. So the turnover there is 3 times as much potentially, right, as a U.S. senator. So, and he's a freshman. This is his first term. So at max, you went up there a year and a half or 2 years, after his term at the end, at max. There has to be some. I need to see if this guy proves himself. If he wins re-election, if he wins re-election again, even if you were interested in that, why are you going to put eggs in a basket of a gentleman who might not even win in, the year after? You know what I mean? So
yeah.
what is the thinking there? You have to be going up there for something. So the
Yeah.
fact that he went up there, there was something else going on. He probably was at Elmendorf. He probably wanted to see things. He's a high up in the House of Representatives, and I think Begich was just someone who happened to be there, who he can put, as this is why I'm going there, when really it wasn't.
Yeah.
So on their flight back, they never made it to where they were intending to go. They never made it back
Whoa.
to the United States. They left. They left Alaska flying over Anchorage and Juneau, and they were on a smaller plane to get them to Seattle to fly, on a major airline back to Washington, and
Yeah.
they vanished mid-air. So the government, again, second time in 20 years, put in an all hands on deck bid to locate this. And after months, no bodies, no planes, no nothing. And it was just hush, hush. We didn't find anything. Carry on with your special elections and move on to the next house leader, who's ever's next down the line.
Yeah.
That is a little bit eerie to me, because now it's your own people that are getting attacked or downed or what have you. And only the other one had years of looking for this plane. This one had a couple months, and then that was it.
Mm. See, this reminds me a lot of, I think it was John Kerry went down and visited Antarctica for some reason after an election. It was either the 2016 or 2020 election. I forget which election that was. But he went down to Antarctica for some unknown reason. And it really reminds me of that, like, and especially after these guys disappear afterwards. They're politicians. They go up to some remote Arctic place, and then they go missing on the plane ride back. Like, how did, like, what happened? Like, what are we missing here? Because it's not like, politicians don't just fucking disappear. You know what I mean?
No. And you don't just leave them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you just don't leave them. They don't, just let him go. Oh, that's it. But that's what they did. They turned that blind eye to him. They said, "Oh, well, I don't know. I
Yeah.
tried. We called it all hands. We couldn't find them." It's almost as if one, the plane never left, and
Yeah.
whatever plane that did leave was making other people think that that was that plane,
Yeah.
or it completely mysteriously vanished. And
Yeah.
you know, the mystery isn't so much a mystery, to people who research it. If you're in the air and you're taken out of the air and there's nothing on the ground, that happens to be, your entire plane was abducted. Your entire,
Yeah.
your entire, a portal was open for you to go through. And there's, a lot of it, a little bit reminds me, I don't know if you've read this short story or seen the movie The Langoliers, where they fly through a, from Stephen King, where they fly through like the Northern Lights and they end up in an alternate dimension.
Oh wow, no,
It just,
I never. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
it
pretty
just
cool.
makes me think of that a little bit. I
Yeah.
own it. It's one of those ridiculously long, like 3.5 hour made for TV movies, but I
Oh
still have
man.
it. Yeah. Well, anyway, it almost reminds me of like they were just flying, and when they left our realm and went to someone else's, and
Yeah.
there's no way to get back, or they have not figured out a way to get back, at least yet.
Yeah.
So what this reminds me of, have you heard of the town of Ketchikan, Alaska?
I have. Because I
Have you?
watched a show about it. I forget
Oh,
what
well,
they're called.
great.
Yeah.
No, that's wonderful. So you might know, where I'm heading with this next is, we have the skies, we have the airplane, the Air Force bases, we have that, but a part in Alaska and Ketchikan, which is basically on the outskirts of British Columbia. It's not really
Yeah.
up there with, Juneau and
It's a temperate climate.
it is. So, much easier on,
Right.
the elements are much easier for people to live in.
Yeah.
But as as the 2010s came about, there were numerous submarine sightings after what you call, I guess, mysterious lights, over the water in
Yeah.
Ketchikan, which, it's on the Sound, it's right, it's a thin town on the coast, basically. So,
Yeah.
they're right up against the water. So
Yeah.
numerous residents are looking out, seeing submarines and things like that, which didn't really raise a lot of people's suspicions, and certainly wouldn't have raised mine, because I'm like, okay, well, I know there is a military, footprint up here.
Yeah.
But when you look at submarines, right, the nearest submarine base is 675 miles away in Washington State.
Oh man.
That's not a training exercise. That's not even a stroll. That
Yeah.
is a full-fledged mission to be up and around there.
Yeah.
And there was so much talk and so much dialogue and so many people being like, what are they doing? You know what I mean? Why are you out here?
Yeah.
That the U.S. government had to come out and disclose that we are engaging in operations, in CFAC, basically, and basically had to blow their own lid on what they're doing over there to help submarines become more unnoticeable in terms of the
Wow.
sound they emit, or change the sound that they emit
Yeah.
underwater to avoid sonar detection.
Yeah.
And the people really, really had to get on them, or when they really got on them, they actually forced the government to speak, which almost never happens.
Yeah.
But as well as I do, when we're talking about making you look here when it's really over here, I guarantee you that maybe why they're up there is 10% might be that.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
And we don't
Yeah.
know what the other 90% is.
Right.
So it's been theorized by locals in and around Alaska that if we have tech, and we're reverse engineering tech from unidentified civilizations as an ongoing partnership, not so much as a downcraft, we take it, steal it, no. We're talking back and forth, that we have nuclear submarines on just a long mission out into the, not regular nuclear submarines that get all the way out 675 miles away from base to engage in trade.
Mm-hmm.
My next question to you, and I think you're going to know the answer to this, what do we have that another civilization would want? Because it certainly isn't tech.
Well, it's interesting that you brought this up, that they're that they have these submarines up there doing stuff. Um, one, I always think the interest from, the NHI, whatever they might be, is in nuclear technology, and most of our submarines are nuclear powered. And two, this is also along the same coastline, that, you go, what, 1,000 or 2,000 miles south, you get to Catalina Island, which is where David Fravor, encountered these Tic Tacs popping out of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And you go up the Alaskan coast on here, and you start seeing stuff like in our second episode with the USOs, the 1971 USS Trepang Tic Tac bursting out of the water. This is all along the same coastline,
Mm-hmm.
like so. And these are engaging with the water. For all we know, what it sounds like is these things are living in the Pacific, so it easily, our submarines could be up there to monitor this activity, that maybe these things are coming out of the ocean and interacting with Alaskan citizens.
Exactly. And when you said citizens there, that's exactly what the thought with the locals is that we made a deal with the devil, if you want to call it that. You know what I mean? Where we will permit you to take our people to experiment on,
right,
in exchange for the tech.
Yeah.
Which is a wild accusation. And yes. I mean wild because
that's heavy. Yeah.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
But that's your own government conspiring against you. That's the root of all upheaval and revolutions and things like that. That's the start of it. So it's a wild accusation that would, even if it is true, would never come to light, I believe. But secondly, when you have that, to me, it's wild because why do they need our permission to take them? You know what I mean? Why do they need... What is it about our government that they would need approval for? Because if you're going to go with an arms race or anything like that, don't even try. You know what I mean? So what? To me, I'm trying to think what would be the possibility. Why does the government need to sign off on it?
I think part of it is actually, well, some people like to talk about the demonic aspect, like like ancient demonology, where you have to give them permission to come in. But I don't think it's that. I think first of all, I want to say, if our government made a deal like that to agree to have humans be taken by them, we will never know about that, and we will never get disclosure. They will fight tooth and nail to never release that information, because that would be the end of America if it came out that the government made a deal. Yeah, it would just be fucking crazy. But really, what I think is actually happening, if that theory were true, which it's a big stretch, but could be true. I think there's other ET factions at play. There's other ET factions, and certain ET factions have certain tech, and we've made a deal with them, as opposed to other, more benevolent ET or more neutral ET. We made a deal with the ones that want to experiment on us. And even if there is experimentation, I mean, there's a nefarious element always, but it may be simply that they need specimens to start adapting themselves to our environment, which, it could be
hybridization.
A hybridization program, and the hybridization theories could go one way or the other. It could be that they're literally trying to find a planet to live on, or that they're trying to conquer our planet. Like it's out there.
A quiet war. How to take it down from the inside and things like that.
Yeah.
I totally get that. But one thing you said jogged my mind is there could be a protection if there's multiple civilizations. there could be a protection aspect that they bring and say, hey, the Toms over there, they want to destroy you and take all your resources and kill every single one of you. They want to kill us too.
Yeah.
We have a common enemy. Can we experiment on your people to try to find, for what you said, a hybrid, creation program? And in exchange, we'll also give you tech to help, your interests.
Yeah.
But the idea that they see us as Americans and not Earthlings,
right,
is still hard to wrap my mind around.
Oh,
because,
yeah.
I mean, what is it? You know what I mean? Has this hybridization gone on long before, and we Americans, or have their ancient blood and Asians have different civilization blood? And who knows? You know what I mean? And that's not for me to get into.
Yeah,
that
could be another episode.
All of you are worth it.
Yeah.
So, we're trying to be as inclusive as possible.
Exactly.
But I'm just raising that question.
Yeah.
Could that be where hey, your Mark, Tom, your DNA as Americans is more closely related to ours, and this creation program could work with that.
See, I don't think when we're talking about those kind of things, I don't think it has to do with geographic, these people have certain genetics and these people do. I think it really comes down to America had the tech at the time. If this theory is true, America had the tech at the time that we were experimenting with nuclear technology. Well, I mean, you think about it, we were the ones that dropped the nuclear bomb on Japan. So probably the aliens marched right up to Eisenhower and said, "We'll make a deal with you, so you don't pull that shit again."
Come here.
You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
It was
nobody wants that to happen again.
Test, right?
Yeah.
Come here.
Yeah.
What was that? I mean, that's basically how I'm going to imagine this now forever. So
yeah,
but changing my mind. But
yeah, but if you would, I would like to bring up the one story that I have about Alaska that I find the most fascinating. So, I mean, we all know the Tic Tac story. It was they saw the Tic Tac, they got it on radar, got everything. It was confirmed as real, so on and so forth. Well, that actually happened in 1987, but because of the time period, it was pretty much derided and just kind of thrown to the side, like nobody really, it was kind of swept under the rug. But the same sort of deal happened where a Japanese pilot. Hold on, let me pull up this story.
Yeah.
One second. Here we go. Now, this is a Washington Post article from 1987, digitized, obviously. UFO sighting confirmed by FAA, Air Force radar. And a veteran pilot, I think he's been a pilot for 25 years at this point, Captain Kenju Terachi, as he was flying his cargo plane from Paris to Japan carrying fine wines, and I think there was only a handful of people on board, him, his co-pilot, and maybe 2 or 3 others, and a flight engineer. Him, his pilot, and his flight engineer. And also air traffic control that he was coordinating with were able to verify that he was witnessing this immense spherical UFO that had like a ring around it, like a little tiny ring around it, along with 2 smaller spheres. And that's interesting that he brings up the spheres in this. And it's just incredible because they have all this data on this. He stuck to his story. He was derided against. And here's a this is him with a drawing of it that he saw. And he saw this very clearly along with his co-pilot and the flight engineer. They all witnessed this and confirmed it. And then as time goes on, they start saying, "Oh, he just saw Jupiter. He just saw Venus and he just saw planets, and he was mistaking planets like how the fuck could an a pilot of 29 years who says that he saw a sphere the size of like a ship right next to him, how could he confuse that for Jupiter? Like it's insane.
I'm going to start a movement against people who claim that things are planets.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do, because to me it's the laziest excuse there is. Give me swamp gas. I haven't heard swamp gas in a while.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But
a weather balloon might be more believable.
Yeah. Like it was a part of his own plane that broke off. I'd be like, oh, that's crazy. But I'm done. I'm done with the planet talk. I'm done with it was Jupiter, it was Venus, it was this planet, it was that planet.
Yeah.
I understand that they are up in the sky. I understand that they are closer to them, but there is no way that you can mistake that planet for being roughly the size of a ship next to you. And for what it's worth, he's very credible in his picture to me. So that's going to add
very serious.
He does look very serious. And, without painting with a broad brush here, there is a lot of seriousness when it comes to your employment in the Japanese culture.
Absolutely.
He's not there to make a scene. He's not there to claim, it's just not in there.
This is the worst thing that could happen to him. Everybody's going to think he's crazy, and he knows it, because in corporate Japanese culture, you don't talk about this kind of stuff at all.
No. You kick your kids out of the family if they get a baby, right? So, you can't ever be put down. And this gentleman, you got to know he knew he was going to be ridiculed standing in front of that plane with that drawing of a circle with a French fry in the middle of it. That he's going to get the business from every, I would say Tom, Dick, and Harry, but it would be like, Wang, Chung, and Fung. But, I don't know what he knew there was no gain to this.
No.
He knew there wasn't. He knew
he was terrified. This is an object that's eclipsing his plane. It's immense in size, just hovering. His plane was moving across it, like it was so large. He described it the way he described it.
Almost like a Death Star, right?
Yeah, like a Death Star just right next to your plane,
It had to have shaken him up enough, or maybe not shaken up in the scared sense, but really shook him to his core enough that he needed to say, I got to talk about this, and I don't care what happens to me.
Yeah. He should be up there with Fravor and Ryan Graves, He's got an extremely similar account that's totally verifiable.
I completely agree. And where was this over again?
This was near Anchorage. He was talking to the flight control, the flight control near Anchorage. And they got on radar, and apparently from the Washington Post article, the U.S. Air Force got on radar too.
So this is independently verified, not just from his physical eyesight, but
they got on radar.
Instrumentally, verified.
Yeah.
So
it's the same kind of deal. Like this is a classic UFO. Like, if nothing else, this is one of the most important UFO cases, along with Fravor, Ryan Graves, Phoenix Lights, so on and so forth.
You can take a look at the outside of a plane and know if it's yours or not in terms of the country that you live in. Mm-hmm. When we see this plane with Japanese, language, and symbols on the side of it, and you see all of that coming, you're going to know, oh, that's not from us. That's not our plane, right? Mm-hmm. I've been to the airport in Philadelphia where you've had, maybe German or French flights that would come in, and there would be something on the plane that would verify that was made over there. It's not crazy to think that if this, this would be more of a base ship than just probably a manned
Yeah, like
or
a
an
mothership.
alien aircraft, right? This
Yeah.
would be a bigger than that. So it's not crazy to think that once they saw that, they know American flights, they know Canadian flights, they know all of the flights in that area that have English. They would know those symbols, right? I bet you if I were to, like, why did they chase this guy? I bet you it's because they had no idea what those symbols meant, and thus they're like, we need to experiment with them, or we need to see, you know what I mean? We need to
Yeah,
see if this is a hostile ship or not. So
that's right.
they took an aggressive approach, which
Yeah.
if you are flying alongside of it at equal speed, close to it, to me that's pretty aggressive.
Yes.
So
And
if you're taking an aggressive approach to it and it still does the same thing, I think they were like, okay, this guy's cool, basically. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like
and
this, there's no intent to harm us.
the interesting thing that you brought up there is, and we got to get into that 4chan post that I keep talking about, but apparently there's like a giant mothership that lives in our oceans that creates little drone UFOs, and the description of that mothership is very similar to this ship here, where it's kind of burger shaped. It's like a giant burger, kind of, So it's just really interesting how that all matches up. And what you were saying before is that, allegedly, when hostile ships go near this thing, they get vaporized. However, it can actually identify what's hostile and what's not. So that's exactly what you're saying. Maybe it was trying to identify, like, is this a hostile ship? Is this a hostile airplane or is it not? And then it just left it alone,
That's I wonder how it would deem hostile or not. Does it mean like the vessel
The
opened
intention,
fire on the mothership?
like the is the ship carrying weapons? That seems to be how it determines whether something is hostile or not, whether it's carrying weapons,
Okay,
and
so
this,
it can identify a potential weapon,
yeah,
or a designed weapon.
a design weapon, yeah,
It would have to know,
yeah,
right? Because when you see military craft, they have the underwing
yeah,
missiles. You know what I mean? They
yeah.
have
You'd be
all
able
of
to see
that.
it, yeah,
This one, it can identify there is none of that. What's under the wing is an engine.
yeah,
So they at least have the advanced knowledge to know what's a propulsion device compared to a weapon,
exactly,
of how we designed it. And how do they know that? My guess is, how would they know what to look for? Is
mm-hmm.
there intervention by military personnel to say, you see that? Let them fly all the time. They have no weapon. There would be a weapon here, 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 and here.
Yeah,
This is what you have to look out for.
yeah. Well,
Or did they come to that on their own? I don't know.
it seems like, especially, in my UFO encounter, it seems like there's an element of consciousness involved. So I'm thinking that's how they probably determine whether something, by their intentions. They probably try to read consciousness inside the craft to try to gather intention. That's what
Wow,
I'd guess.
that's fascinating. So would you hypothesize that it can feel whether you have a weapon or not?
Yeah, they probably, the craft probably hovered over the Japanese plane and sought the intention that they were scared and just wanted to be left alone, instead of, we're here to try to attack you. Like, they didn't get that vibe. You know what I mean?
I totally agree, and I guess if I were to play devil's advocate here with all of that, just because you have weapons doesn't mean you're going to use them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So consciousness, that would have to come into play. Otherwise, they would just be shooting anything that has a
Right.
a tomahawk missile under the wing. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Exactly.
Or say this guy had a handgun on the plane. You know what I mean? That's technically a weapon. Could it do anything? No, but I don't think a missile could do anything to it either.
No.
That's
the thing.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was rendered useless, even if it was discharged.
Yeah.
And then the people below have to worry about a falling 2-ton rocket. Then that would be bad. But and that's a whole different type of weapon in the first place.
Yeah.
But No, I love this story. Thank you for bringing this up, because this one is a phenomenal one, and really highlights. Well, it also highlights a little bit the culture change between different different cultures. Honestly, with how they interpret the
Yes.
mysterious, because we can talk about it here all we want, but do we have any idea how someone in the Middle East or Australia or Russia or South America know how they feel about it?
Yeah.
And I bet you if we ask all different ones, we're going to get all different answers too.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to get into here before we hop off is my part, and it's the cryptid part.
All
So
right.
some of these individuals that have gone and mysteriously disappeared, I can't really say much for planes leaving the sky and things like that, but a lot of the disappearances on the ground, let's call like the wilderness, disappearances, right?
Yeah.
Where people go off into the woods hiking and no one ever finds them and no one can ever find them. And there are grizzly bears and things like that, but there are also grizzly bears in Canada and Montana and other places where, it's not only isolated to Alaska. But one thing that some of the local Native American lore in the area point to and say is a cryptid by the name of a Wendigo. Have you ever heard of a Wendigo
Yes.
before? Okay. So a Wendigo is basically a half human and half animalistic but demonic spirit, where this story behind this came from Native American lore again, but it was about humans who abandoned their humanicity. Let's
Mhm.
call it that. They were human. They turned to cannibalism. They turned to eatings. And so the spirit world in this lore said, if you're not going to act human, we're going to take human away from you. So they
Mhm.
still have the human figure, but they also allowed demons to possess them, demonic spirits possess them. But
Mhm.
in terms of a cryptid lore, they're one of the more dangerous ones. You have Bigfoots, and all they do is walk away from you and give you a three-quarter profile turn, right?
Yeah.
That's what they do. So this one, if you encountered this one, and the stories coming out of Alaska are actually growing by the year.
Mhm.
And it's probably, if I were to put my hat on, it's probably deforestation and they're growing, the population's getting bigger, but so close to even 3 to 5 miles outside of major cities like Juneau, Nome, Anchorage, that they're having sightings on back roads of families running into a Wendigo, which they're characterized by human looking, skin like peeled back off of their bones almost,
Yep.
almost a animal like head, but the skin is like still of a human, so it's like wrapped too tight over the bone,
Mhm.
and really large hands, like you have a regular hand but longer fingers, like elongated type of thing.
Yeah.
And there are some stories with antlers, some without, so I'm not going to include that just because I've heard both.
Yeah.
But when you have those, people are talking about, I've seen it, I know what I saw, and I don't have to prove it to you. I am going to take a longer listen to somebody from Alaska who isn't coming to Hollywood trying to sell a story. People are going to them and they're like, "Yeah, I saw it. Yeah, it happened over there." You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And you know, if you're going to believe in afterlife and the spirit world and things of that nature, you need to take all of that into consideration. And the fact that this is based on a Native American lore, you know, rather than a manifestation or something nobody's ever heard of, and now they're saying the new one's there.
Mhm.
It speaks a little bit to me. So where are you on Wendigo and or a cryptid or supernatural
Well,
predator lurking in the woods?
so I think this deserves a whole episode devoted to this,
Yes,
a whole
yes,
series of episodes,
absolutely.
because this
You know
is
how I
a
love them. I love them.
big subject. Now there's the variant of Wendigo that's like a fucked up deer that's like
Yeah, yeah,
continuously bleeding. They're giant. And see, the thing is, there's this, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of clarity on the difference between a Wendigo, a skinwalker, the rake, and the pale crawler. They all seem to be interrelated. Like
Yes.
you said, that it seems to start out with a Native American shaman practicing dark magic, which requires cannibalism, and
Yes.
they sort of turn into this fucked up version of a human. And I guess over time, the end result is turning into this sort of monstrous forest demon like
Yes.
being. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Mhm.
I actually think that's also related to things like Dogman and stuff. And I'd love to do a Dogman episode.
Oh yeah, the Dogman.
Yeah,
Michigan.
the Michigan Dogman. Yeah, and in the Ozarks too. There's some pretty crazy shit out there. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all that this stuff is found in Alaska, because it's got the right setting for it. You know what I mean? And if we subscribe to the idea that perhaps the natives were correct and these forests are alive and have spirits that inhabit them, you know, I think that's definitely a possibility. We could be seeing some sort of fucked up forest demon, you know?
I completely agree. And I also agree, you know, and loyal listeners, stay tuned, because we will have a whole series. We're going to have a dedicated month basically to these cryptids, because, you know, we talk about everything labeled paranormal. That's our title. So we will not shy away from anything at all. But to put a bow on this, the Alaskan Triangle, to me, whether you want to say it's real in terms of a physical nature, you know, I don't know about that. But the stories of Alaska, whether it's a triangle, a parallelogram, a square, whatever you want to call it, there's something going on up there where a heavy military presence with a low population often will breed weird things.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So, all right, that's all for this episode of Label Paranormal. I hope you enjoyed listening to this topic as much as we enjoyed telling it. And if you did, please leave a like, subscribe to the podcast, leave us 5 stars. We really would appreciate 5 stars. Follow us at social media, Label Paranormal, YouTube, Label Paranormal, or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or tell your smart speaker, Alexa, play Label Paranormal. Share your feedback, suggestions, or experiences with us by emailing labeledparanormal@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, keep an open mind and a curious spirit. See you, everyone.
See you guys.